Happening today, the woman suing Meta and YouTube takes the stand. Her claim is that those sites are addictive and harmful to mental health. CBS News correspondent Chanel Call reports that's happening while Instagram is announcing a new safety tool for parents.
So this is a new feature now being rolled out by Meta. So you'll see it on the Instagram app. And the intention here, Meta says, is to make the app itself safer for young people who use it, namely teenagers. So how is this going to work? Well, Meta is saying teenagers who search any kind of self-harm or suicide content repeatedly on the Instagram app will then get their parents to be alerted to this type of activity. Those alerts will happen either through text messages, emails, WhatsApp messages, or even a notification in the app itself. Now, what Meta didn't specify today is how many searches might trigger that type of notification. But at this point, they are saying not only will they notify the parent through this kind of notification, they're also going to be sending some mental health resources. At this point, they say the feature will launch in the U.S., in Canada, in the U.K., and in Australia, and that the company has a broader plan for a bigger global rollout later on this year. We should note the timing of this is also noteworthy because this announcement happening today by Meta, but Meta is also involved in a separate lawsuit right now. There is a trial happening in Los Angeles where people are accusing companies just like Meta and other social media apps of creating these addictive apps that have now become, they argue, harmful to the mental health of young Americans. Back to you.
Chanel, thank you for that. All right, I want to bring in Emma Lemke, the founder of the Log Off Movement and director of Gen Z advocacy at the Sustainable Media Center. Emma, great to be with you. In 2023, you also testified before Congress to advocate for regulations on social media. Tell us more about the Log Off Movement and why you started it.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me on. So I started the Log Off Movement when I was 17 years old because I realized that I didn't hate social media, but I hated the way that it was designed and the way that it made me feel. I was constantly comparing myself to others. I was being fed pro-anorexic and dieting content materials as a young woman, and I was scrolling mindlessly for hours. So I felt like I was losing control of my life, my time, and my energy. And these were all negative effects that I felt starting at the age of 12 years old. And what I realized after talking to many people in my community and online is that millions of young people were feeling the same way, but we all thought that it was a personal failure. And the simple truth is it's not. These platforms are designed to prioritize engagement over the well-being of their youngest users. So Log Off is all about helping young people rebuild a healthier relationship with technology and creating a community of shared experience dedicated to reclaiming autonomy over our lives and our technology.
So what do you make of Instagram's new alerts warning parents if their teens are searching for self-harm or suicide information? How effective do you think this is really going to be in practice?
Well, I'd say in the beginning, any tool that gives parents more visibility and assists them in aiding their young person through the online experience is a step in the right direction. But the bigger question is whether the underlying design of the platform is healthy. Notifications about harm, they don't change how the algorithm works, what type of content is amplified, and how engagement is prioritized. So this may help at the margins, but it doesn't address the much deeper design incentives that are driving the harms in the first place.
And are you concerned that teens are just going to figure out a way around that they could maybe establish separate accounts that their parents aren't aware of? Isn't that possible?
Oh, absolutely. I always say this about Gen Z. We are the scrappiest generation. If there's a way that we will be able to find to get around these incentives and these restrictions, we will. One thing I also will note is that with Instagram's features, oftentimes with older versions, they had to have dual access. So a young person had to agree and a parent had to agree for it to go into place. For those parental assisting tools, it was recently found in court documents that 0.38% of the youth decided to enroll. 0.38%. Let's talk about that and how awful that is and also how ineffective. So even if these platforms are working diligently to roll out these new and very timely, as was mentioned with the lawsuit, tools, it is vitally important that we still apply pressure for them to address their underlying addictive features.
So Australia recently banned users under 16 from having social media accounts. And there are some skeptics that believe mental health is determined on many different factors. Social media is just one part of that. and that by banning it for young people, we're delaying the development of an important skill set. Do you agree with that?
Here's what I'll say about the Australian ban.
Okay.
I understand why Australia is taking bold action. Young people are standing up and talking about harms. Parents are scared and worried. Teachers are annoyed with phones in the classroom. And policymakers, they feel pressure to respond. But the question shouldn't be just about age. It should be about design. If platforms are built in ways that amplify harmful content and encourage compulsive behaviors, raising the age doesn't fix the underlying issues driving that diverse array of harms. So I don't think this is an either or. It's very, very complex. But fundamentally, young people deserve platforms that are developmentally appropriate in the first place and not addictive. So ultimately, while I applaud the efforts of Australian lawmakers to protect kids online, the goal shouldn't just be how to keep them off platforms. It should be how to make platforms safer when they decide to enter. Because you mentioned kids are scrappy, they'll find ways on. We need to make sure that when they get online, they are safe.
Okay, so there's gonna be a lot of parents though that are watching this, Emma, and kind of at a loss because they didn't grow up with social media. They're trying to navigate this with their children as well. What are some tips that you would suggest maybe to parents who are watching that want to know how they should talk about social media with their children, and some helpful tools to either use it in a healthy way or to take it out of the equation?
Absolutely. I think one very, very basic first step is to approach the conversation with your young person with curiosity and openness. Oftentimes, like I mentioned earlier, young people feel the shame of not being able to unplug. They feel the shame of struggling with their online usage. And it's very important that they feel they can go to someone when something inevitably goes wrong, when they see harmful content, when they feel they're scrolling too long. And where that starts is open and honest dialogue. So I encourage all parents out there to really open up with their young person. Ask, why are you going online? What pulls you into the online world? Why do you want to stay? How do you feel like you're harmed? And to collaboratively build family plans around tech usage.
Yeah, it can be such a challenge though, because social media is essentially social currency for so many children. It's how they connect with their friends and people around the world. All right, Emma Lemke, thank you so much for that insight. It was great to see you.
Thank you for having me on.